Now, folks, can you all hear me? Yeah, good, good, good. We're off to a flying start. So hang on a second. I'm doing my Kieran Malooly thing here with my headphones in. There. Right, and we're up and running, and we're recording. Everything is perfect from my end. Quality stats, of course it would be. Sure, why wouldn't it? For heaven's sake. Complete new setup this semester to what you might have been familiar with previously. Different setups, cameras, and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, panic mode. No? Nobody panicking. Some people are talking, some people are nodding heads, and a lot of people with those anxious smiles. Oh, dear God. Oh, where let's start? Okay. Okay, I'm recording this, and I'll do the usual thing, and I'll put it up onto YouTube, and I'll send a link to Nuala and Sinead, excuse me, later on tonight. And well, it won't be too much later on tonight because I need to get to bed early. So, I only have a couple of questions, not for ye, but submitted. So, and that's what I'll take. And the first question is, can you remind us how the assignment is marked as it follows? Part 1, 20%, part 2, 30%, part 3, 30%, and the final reflective report, 20%. So we have the assignment inside here, and it's I don't know who's coming up with those parts. There are essentially three parts to the assignment. And yes, there's 20, 30, 30, and then 20% for the reflective practice. Excuse me. Now, the way I mark it is each part I mark out of 100. So, for example, if you take part 2, I have all these criteria that I'm looking for in the assignment, and then I take whatever I get out of 100, divide it by 100, and multiply by 30 to give you your percentage out of 30. And same for the other 30% and the 20 and 20, add them all together, and that becomes your overall final mark. So essentially, yes, they are broken down to those, but to make it easier to mark them and to have how to say, more individualization of the marks, I mark them out of 100 and then aggregate them down. So that's how the mathematics of it works. And the three main parts, you have the part 1, 20%. So you have three elements that you need to address in this assignment, essentially. Communication, motivational drivers, and behavior modification. And then finally, organizational change. And they're the three core elements. So if you think about it, it's actually testing you on all the three parts of the module: leadership, strategic HRM, and organizational behavior. That's essentially what you're being asked to write your assignment on. I'm looking at the assignment here on the screen beside me. So we have this saying, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it. So how do you inspire people to do stuff? It could be inspiring. It could be coercion. Oh, dear. The power of coercion. Carrot and stick. It depends on the individuals, and that's what I'm getting into. So how do you communicate? You have to be very clear, precisely, I hope, what I'm trying to do here, being clear as to what's expected in the assignment, so clear instructions and so on. And if you think about it, we've discussed elements of single loop and double loop and triple loop learning, certainly single and double loop learning. And if I were to tell you to write a paragraph on communication, and then write a paragraph on strategic HRM and write a paragraph on organizational behavior. That's it. You're told a paragraph. And common sense would say that that's about a third of a page, give or take, per paragraph, if that were the case. So that's single loop learning. I'm telling you what to do, you go ahead and do it. No ifs, buts about it, as you would have heard that expression. But if I were to say, I want you to write about communication, the logical thing is that you might ask me, well, how much? What elements do you want? How do you want me to cover it? Communication and what? And narrow it down. So there's a two-way, there's a dialogue going. That's the point about communication. And, you know, the clarity of goals, objectives, the dialogue, the process of communication. So it's all, and that's essentially what I'm asking you to look at in the first part of the assignment. Okay, so look at all that material around communication, clarity, vision, how leaders would talk about, or in organizations, or a department manager might say, this is the expectation, this is the these are the objectives of the organization, or these are the objectives of the project, and how clearly or not these are being communicated. Some people are good at it, other people are not so good at it. You know, you can pick examples all over the place where communication is lacking. I mean, for example, right now, do we know precisely when this lockdown is finishing? No. I mean, there's a lot of bewilderment about it, for example. Why? Because it's not being clearly communicated. End of January, beginning of February kind of thing. Actually, we'll see. So that leads to anxiety, obviously, frustration, depression, annoyance. Precisely the same things happen inside in organizations and to us as individuals when something is not clearly communicated in terms of our expectations, such that we can match our expectations with their expectations. And they're the fundamentals of communication, but it's so damn important to get that element of it right. So that's how the assignment is broken down into the three areas. I have another question here. I'm just going to take these handful of questions first, and if you have any queries afterwards, then we can take them in open forum. Introduction, theory, practical. So if I approach the structure of the assignment like this, theory and practical applications of three segments, communication, motivation, and so on. And lastly, organizational change, and link all to that to SHRM, leadership, organizational change, then conclude. I wouldn't split it out like that. I would take each of the three sections in totality. In other words, if I'm talking about communication, I'll talk about the theory of it. This is what's expected. This is how it works. These and so on and so forth. Then I would pepper that with examples. Okay, that's what I'm asking you to do. Why do we do it that way? Because here's the theory, and here are my examples or my experiences. When you link them together, it will demonstrate your understanding of the theory. And it may be the case that your examples don't fit the theory, so you have to look back in the theory. Well, the example that I'm using could have been managed differently. The communication could have been done differently to fit this particular model or framework, and to give it a little bit more precise, because you might have found during in your example that there was deficiencies or faults or problems with the way things were communicated to you. And if the manager or person communicating, leader, had used this approach, it would have been clearer, or we would have had less frustration, maybe less annoyance, and so on. So there's 2 and 4. You can debate or discuss positives and negatives of the experience versus. So the theory first, and then put in your experiences and why a particular model worked or didn't work. Is now the best way you can respond to me is use the reaction. So if you're following what I'm saying, just give me a thumbs up when I ask you, are you happy enough on that? That's okay. I'm getting some thumbs up on that. Yeah, happy days, as we say. Simply because, do you know what I described as some people don't put up turn on their cameras, which is fine. I know it's a bit late in the day to be worried about being in dressing gowns and not having the makeup on, and that's just the fellas. Sorry. But I was describing this to my daytime students last week. I was so frustrated. There was 70 of them online, and not one of them had a camera on. I was getting really frustrated here because I want to be able to see some kind of reactions, whatever kind of reactions. Even if they're throwing their eyes up to heaven with boredom, I don't care. I want to see reactions. But anyway, I described it to her. I said it's like going into a bloody morgue or a mortuary and just have all these tabs, boxes up there, and the names of the deceased on the in the morgue or in the crematorium or whatever you want to call the place. I said that's what it's like for me when I don't see any cameras and so on. I know it's horrendous, isn't it? And some people might say, geez, Mark, you're awful insensitive with all this stuff going on with COVID. For Christ's sake, I mean, people have been dropping with the flu for fucking hundreds of years, well, at least. This is no different. Anyway, this is all being recorded. Jesus, will I shut up? Anyway, where was I? So, yeah, taking the three elements. So take each three, and then when you've done each of those three main sections, the three subsets of the overall module, then write your reflective report. Bearing in mind, use Kolb's or Gibbs cycle. Or if you find another one, probably not. But use them. And I mean physically use them in your reflective report. It's really, really important. That's where students actually lose marks from me. They don't physically include the diagrams or reference them properly and say, no, this is how I'm going to put in the diagram and this is how I'm going to discuss it, observation, abstract conceptualization, experience, and so on, and go through it in that sequence. Excuse me. I had a group of students at Christmas, and similarly, I told them use either of those models in your reflective report. And again, never ceases to amaze me. Not saying about yourselves, but these are undergrads, and I think less than 15% of them actually use the model. After I explicitly tell them, this is like single loop learning. Put this into your reflective report, or you'd be losing 20% of the 100% that would be allowed for that or allocated for that part of the marking. And remarkably, the majority of students didn't do so, But I'm sure now that I've highlighted their story that you're not going to fall into the same trap. Okay, so you don't forget to use. A lot of people actually interestingly use Gibbs cycle. My preferred solution is or a cycle is a bicycle. No, is Kolb cycle. But by all means, Gibbs, sometimes people find that a little bit easier to use because it brings in emotion explicitly into it. So that's how to structure it. And the last question I have up here was, how should we reference the reading material posted on Moodle? That's very, very simple. Just put up courseware or Cashin, whatever year courseware Moodle site reference. That's fine. Yep. There's no need to go back to the actual route in all of those cases. That would just take you time, to be honest with you. So I'd be happy enough just to see that there's reference to courseware Moodle 2020 or whatever. COVID 2020 Moodle. So that's the sum total of the 3 questions that were submitted by postal vote. Fake news. Do you have any other questions, folks?
Could I ask, Mark?
Yeah, very Carmen.
Just there, going back, because you wanted in a report
Yeah.
version rather than an essay. So do we put an introduction and a conclusion, or do you just do the 3 pieces just like you've said?
I'll just do a very, very brief introduction, paragraph, and that's about it, really. And just double check on the assignment brief, discuss that, analyze the significance of that, and discuss the critical role of leadership and management to play in facilitating organizational change. Yeah. I just those three main elements. That's all. And you can, as I said, you could put a very brief paragraph in at the very start, possibly highlighting, suggesting that you're taking your examples from various work experiences, and that's about it. And then delve straight into the actual part one. I would probably structure it as part one, communication, and then part 1.1 is theory, concepts, frameworks around for effective communication, and then discuss some of those, and then practical applications and use of these based on my past experience and something. So the experiential part of it. So you kind of have two parts to two subsections to each part, if you follow me. The theory and then the application. That'll make it a little bit easier, to be honest with you.
Just go back there again now. Part one will say communication, and then point one is what? Again, how do you break it down?
I'd say maybe use some subheading like concepts, theory, and frameworks for effective communication, something like that. So that's the theory part of it.
Okay. And then you do 1.2 for the examples, is it?
Exactly. So you might choose an example or a couple of examples and say and fit a model to those examples, and saying and then when you're wrapping up those, this model was used or this model could have been used in this case to show how effective communication did work or didn't work, and just discuss it like that, the pluses and minuses, because not everything is perfect, and that gives me the information to be able to clearly identify that you've understood the models you've chosen or the particular framework you've chosen in that situation. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me have a quick look at there's stuff coming in here on chat. Bear with me a second now till I just pop up to where my last comment was, holy Jesus, am I that old? Okay, from there down. I'm just wondering if the reference we covered. Okay, that's fine. Just use standard Harvard referencing, by the way. Do we analyze one theory against another, as in I agree with this? Not necessarily. No need to compare theories. Just talk about them. You might just say one is probably a little bit more effective because it does this, and then and that's it. Just there's no need to critique. In other words, do a critical analysis of the different theories. No need for that. Where else do we? That's an example of first-person text. Not really. I don't quite understand it. Can you just give us an example?
Me.
Hi, Tara.
Yeah, I have never written anything in the first person, so I'm a little reluctant and I'm a little unsure how to stick it in. So it's like, say I observed this in this situation kind of text, or the author has noted blah blah blah.
Oh no, just go straight for the jugular, Tara, and everyone else really. Just say I observed this and so on.
The brain mark, it's everything that we've not done for the last however long, so it's hard. I just have a mental block on it.
Exactly, and that's why I push it. Is to get you out of that comfort zone and to get you comfortable in talking about the I, because the reality of it is, this is like the royal we, and the observer and the author and so on, as far as if it's some person. No, you might use that in some more formal academic type work, like a dissertation or something, or a thesis or something like that. You might want to structure it like that a little bit more to depersonalize it as such. But Not in this instance. I'd say, and I know people do have a challenge, particularly in reflective reports. People have a real issue about talking about themselves in the first instance. But really, you need to get beyond that, because they are your experiences. They're not somebody else's, and you can lose impact when you're talking about yourself in the third person and so on. Some people could argue that, well, if you're you might make other observations if you're talking about yourself in the third person, but we don't really go around, in normal life like that, so we have a direct communication. It's isn't that right, Mark? Sorry.
Thanks, Mark.
I was going to say Bob said that, but Bob is my acronym for the Bible of bullshit. Jesus, I'll be shot for saying things like that. And this is all being recorded. God almighty, I'll get censored. Okay, how am I doing with these comments? Last one. Can I change the layout as in discuss change management first? Why would you do that, Riona? Technically, changing the order of things is doable, but if you're going to run a change program, the first thing you need to do is communicate it, and then motivate people to do it, and then do the actual change. So putting it the other way around, technically it can be done, but I think that's probably bringing a bit more work on yourself to do it that way. Let's just put it. I've no objection.
Yeah, I had it done, let's say. I don't have it completely finished yet. And the way I sort of done it was that, let's say I talked about all the change, and then it got on to the communication, let's say. But it said in the communication that wouldn't have worked, or, the change wouldn't have been successful without the communication aspect being so in it.
Yeah. Well, it'll work. It'll work. As I said, it's if it works for you, then yeah, I it's fine with me. It's fine with me. I don't have an issue with that at all. The sequencing.
I'll wait till I'm finished and see what it. I might
Yeah,
have to re-edit it anyways.
Maybe not, but it's there is absolute sense in what you're saying. There's here's the strategy of what we wanted to do, and we wanted to get to this stage, this, yeah, so it'll work in that case, and you could even take it actually in technically you could take it, here's the change program, and then talk about communication, and then talk about motivation. It's things will come, but people, if the communication fails, then the motivation will fail. You could have highly motivated people, but if they don't know what to do, and this is what you set out to do, and it wasn't clearly communicated, then they can be demotivated just as quickly as being highly motivated. So technically, as long as you have a structure and form, and you could actually, okay, I'll go back on what I'm saying. If you want to change the layout in terms of 1, 3 and 2, or 3, 1 and 2 in terms of the parts, just state that in the opening paragraph that I've taken this project in the following format and structure, and that'll give you as much flexibility as you would like.
Great, thanks, Million.
Okay. Is there anything else coming up here? The layout. For the reflection, are we reflecting on the examples used in the assignment, or writing of the assignment, or wider experience? Good question. I'm trying to narrow it down for you rather than. Okay, don't write it on the assignment. I would say look for 1 or 2 impactful examples in your experience, okay, and write about them. Okay. Yeah, a couple of examples in your past experiences, and sorry, you're going off camera, and write about them. Don't constrict yourself to just the assignment. That would probably be a bit a hell of a lot more difficult. And yeah.
Thanks.
So
That's great. Thank you.
okay. Now let me have the look at the next question coming here. Oh, this is a long one. This is like an assignment in itself. Just a direct message. Okay, it's good. I'm glad you like the videos. Someone is just using different approach. And then there's to everyone here. Hi Mark, we're talking about practical applications in the main parts. Do I use the first person as well? I've covered that point about the first person and third person and the royal we already. Okay, someone else just come back with the same question. And yeah. Any other questions, comments, clarity?
Can I ask a question, Mark?
Yes, Sharon, yeah.
So just in context of the quote and the accompanying statement, and when we're asked to critically discuss that, do you want us to discuss that separately or embed that in down through the, you know, the assignment? You know, the quote in the statement, are we the
the quote in the statement, that's more of a lead-in. I wouldn't when you're talking about the theory, you could reference back to the quote, you know, and this the theory supports this part of the quote or that part of the quote, but I wouldn't overly focus on the quote at all. That's just to give you an idea of the power of what we're trying to do with these elements, so to speak. Am I making that point clear enough?
I know I'm just a task-oriented learner, so when I read it, it's like, okay, critically discuss this statement and accompanying quotation. So, you know, it's like,
yeah,
did I read that? That's what I'm going to do, you know. But then I was wondering, look, there, just embed it down, and like as you say, reference back there if I see where it matters or doesn't matter.
Is it, if we stand back again even a step further, the module is managing and leading organizations and organizational change, and it's fundamentally about leadership. So effective leaders, what did they do and how did they operate as such? And that's why I put in that quote. It's essentially getting someone to do something you want them to do because they want to do it, how to find those trigger points, those motivations, and how to understand their behaviors and to achieve organizational change, new projects, new product. Now, it doesn't need, again, it could be your immediate supervisor, line manager, or whether it doesn't have to be United States president or former, as of Thursday, presidents, thank God. It doesn't have to be of that caliber, but you know, these profound statements coming from the Twitter sphere. No, jeez, I've gone off on tangents. It doesn't have to be these iconic statements such. They're just by way of identifying that you can get things done. So I mean, you know, you in a small organization, it could be just the demeanor of the owner or the department manager and so on and so forth that can be motivational, and the way they communicate. Sometimes we can be extremely effective in communicating without saying a word, for example. So that's what it's about, having that how to say, sphere or culture inside an organization or society inside an organization that has all the positive attributes of good leadership, and people want to come in. I might have referenced in conversations, there's a couple of managers I worked for over the years that you went in with a problem and you came out with 4 problems, but you were delighted to get those 4 problems. These guys just had ways of getting you to do stuff even though you didn't want to do them. You came out wanting to do them and more. It's that's what we're kind of driving at.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Not all, Sharon. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Practical obligation in them. Yeah. Okay.
Mark, can I
Yeah.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I'm struggling with examples because I suppose the last time I had a performance review proper was probably 25 years ago. And then I was self-employed for 17 years on contract to various places, and now I'm working for one of them. And it's we're not managed. We manage ourselves, really. It's all KPIs, and it's based on the quality of the support you give. But it's very much it's autonomy in that sense. So we don't have day-to-day managers, or you don't take problems to managers. You're really your own solution finder, and you sort it, and you peer work together, maybe, if you're helping each other. So kind of over the last week or two, when we've had study groups, we've broke into rooms, and there seems to be there could be 12 different ways you could do this, because some people are coming purely from an organization, and if I'm not, then how do I put in the examples in that sense? Like I could go in and do the one and tell you everything what I believe leadership is and how it affects all these different aspects of communication and hearing and inclusiveness and everything. And then I could go in and put the theory, if you want, in that sense. But I don't really have a lot of examples, in that sense, apart from to say that 25 years ago when I worked in England, they were fantastic at performance reviews. But I haven't had one. I had kind of a token one a few years ago.
Well, it's you in actual fact, Corey, you've been answering most of your own questions there. You would reference the fact that in a structured environment such as 25 years ago, because for the most part, I would be exactly the same. We don't have performance appraisals and third level and all this sort of stuff. It would have been at least that when I would have had my last performance appraisal in a company with structure and format. And do I miss it? Absolutely. And for example, we all have these pay scales inside there. Now, to say that I'm on the same salary as somebody else, for example, if they're putting in far less effort or far more effort, it's totally, how to say, skewed system. And I prefer to be in control of my own. If I work hard, I expect to be rewarded hard. If I don't work, then and so some people say I won't work at all, but I still want to be rewarded hard. Different mindsets, but the mindset, should I say, in public service would be much different to the private sector, and so on and so on. So you have a lot of material there by 2 distinct types of organization. And by the sounds of it, you would be clearly someone that needs a little bit more feedback and form and structure and so on, as opposed to the I won't say the ad hocry, but the looseness or the autonomy that you have now at the moment. Maybe there's one of the models that in terms of motivation and organizational structure, or all 3 of them, could be adapted to change. And how could we put some more form and structure onto our current way of doing things? Would that be suitable for the majority of people, or is it just for me, kind of thing? So yeah, you have 2 very valuable experiences to use.
Okay, so so it's okay to kind of go back and say 25 years ago, blah, 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 but now I'm not in this scenario, and it would be very useful if this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the 360 performance review type of attitude, but it's just that we don't have management. Like we don't have the people to be there. Everyone's a worker,
Well, absolutely, but and then there's we talked about formal and informal and natural leadership there in some of the material as well. You might be talking to somebody that's more experienced in your area of work, and that person might be a default leader as such. So how they do things and so on and so forth would influence or inform how you're doing things as such. So there could be those natural leaders, as we often call inside in the
I'm
organization.
that person actually in the group because I'm doing it the longest. So
Yeah.
and some people said to me, sorry not to hug it, some people said to me, would you talk about it yourself as a leader in those roles or in training? But no.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, by default, you know that you've how would you say you've been put on that pedestal. You may not like it, and remember I talked about the characteristics of effective leadership. You can have all the qualities, and unless you have that final element, wanting to be a leader, then all the rest are of no benefit to you. It's you have to want to take, and that may mean thinking differently and so on. But certainly when you don't have any form or formality around feedback and so on, it does become even more and more difficult. Then you have to become more reliant on your own self-awareness and effectiveness, and they in themselves can lead to levels of anxiety, however small or large, because the last thing you want is someone to come along and say, sorry, Mark, we're not happy with the way you're doing things here, and say, well, you haven't been given feedback. And I did talk about Jack Welch and how he said that the most important role in the organization is HR in terms of giving feedback. Unless people know exactly what's expected of them or close to exactly, then why blame them for not performing? You can't. It's the process. So the process of not giving feedback, not having effective communications, themselves are at fault, not you. And I've said it for so many years. Blame the process, not the people.
Thanks.
Okay, so there's no more questions coming in here at the moment. How are we doing?
Hi, Mark. Hi, Mark.
Oh yeah, how you, Kira?
Hi. I just had a quick question. I know you spoke of the reflection already, but I was just wondering, you had said, so write it with regard to impactful examples in your experiences. And do you mean to go back on the examples that we had already written about in the assignment or different ones?
It can be either or.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be either or. It's because remember, you're looking at the examples you're talking about in the assignment. You're talking about specific examples that would feed into communication and so on. Now, in your reflective report, you're looking at it from a different perspective. You could be using the same example, and you could say that, well, if I was doing this is how I would change things. If remember my saying, what did I do previously in communications? We did this, and then this. How would I improve the way I did what I did previously? So would you change the way you communicated? Would you do different things? And that's what I'm trying to get out of you from the reflective practice side of it,
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much.
No, that's all.
Mark, hi Mark, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, Derva.
It's kind of slightly touching on CORAs, but I'm just wondering, does it we'll say you're using an example of leadership, be it good, bad, or effective. Does it have to be purely organizational, totally based on organization, or can you use, we'll say, a sample in something that might have happened, a situation in your life, in line with kind of the personality trait, or does it have to be specific to an organization?
Does
that make any sense?
I'm thinking this out. It's in terms of the leadership. They'd have to have impact on you in terms of communication and behavioral change. Yeah, and that's why it's often easier just to stick with organizations in that context, Could you be a bit more explicit, Dervla?
If you had an example of a situation in life, like I suppose everybody has millions, but it's just something that struck me in terms of, it was a very small thing, but it stuck with me, for years. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't actually it was nothing to do with work. It was something to do with like a leadership, you know,
Mm.
and she's what I would deem really good leadership. It's you know, it's just to bring in another, we'll say, example of what I believe is good
Yeah.
leadership, and how you can go on to, we'll say, bring that into every part of your life, be it work or personal.
Yeah.
I suppose it's in line with personality traits as well, maybe.
You're into a slightly different area there.
Okay.
What actually happens there? Do you remember me talking about the 3 M's, the mission, mentor, and mirror?
Yeah.
And I talked about mentors, and there are certain people you would come across over your life's experiences and so on, and I say, I like the way she said that, I like the way she carries herself in that meeting, or I like the way he said, or the gestures he used. I mean, you know, I often use Obama as one of my mentors, and it's the way he actually looks away from the camera. He's talking to the people around him. He doesn't play to the camera as I'm doing here, for example. But yeah, so but they leave lasting impact. So they're kind of mentors in terms of your informing your own sense making of leadership styles, characteristics, traits, call them what you will. So we look at these things, and you know, we would have all have a number of life experiences as such, and we use them more or less as a benchmark. So when we're working for a particular organization, we say, well, this is my perception of a leader, and this is how this person is actually performing, and they're ticking most of the boxes, but he could maybe have a bit more eye contact, for example, or she might have a bit more eye contact, and you know, that would work effectively well as such, you know. So yeah, so I'm getting the hint from what you're saying there, Dervla, that it's the mentor type influence you're talking about, as opposed to leadership in organization. Yeah, hope that helps.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Not at all. And anyone else?
Can I just ask one final question, Mark?
Yeah.
Just on the American scheme, are we to use more journal articles, or is there more of an emphasis now that we're in a level 8 to be using those?
Use more which articles?
Well, just kind of journal articles rather than taking references just from websites.
Journal articles. The tricking as well. If you're looking up stuff on the web, you will find reference to a journal. I'd go into the journal and see when it was published and so on and so forth, and get the authors of the journal and so on, rather than saying found on the website on such and such a date and so on, because you're probably looked at an actual document, whether it's a PDF or a PowerPoint or whatever, and go in and find the absolute original source of that document itself. And that's quite legitimate then in terms of referencing, rather than access web page such and such on such and such a date, you know. Does that kind of cover it?
Martin, can I add to that as well? I think, I don't know if Rihanna means this, but you know, contemporary publications like, say, the New York Times or that kind of stuff, is it okay to reference kind of you know, current thinking that wouldn't necessarily be an academic paper, you know, that kind of stuff? Is it, you know, because again, like that, it's level 8. What kind of referencing material is okay? Is it okay to go with newspapers or journal, you know, not exclusively, but to include them?
Yeah. I wouldn't believe half the shite that's written in newspaper.
I'm using newspapers as an example.
Oh no!
But
no, sorry, Tara. I'm after putting my 2 feet in it here. I'm just after spotting a minor on the screen. Oh jeez! I won't say who. I won't embarrass anyone. But there's oh holy crap! Anyway, I hope that contemporary. If there's generally speaking anything new that you'll see in our reference, see in newspapers or anything like that, as long as not the Guardian or the Irish Examiner. No, I'm joking. They're both rubbish. It'll just be an opinion as opposed to a researched article, so to speak. You know, am I making myself understood on that one? you know,
But is there still room for opinion in terms of, say, you know, again, things around COVID, things around Brexit, things around, you know, it's very current. And I'm just wondering in terms of research, you know, just as in general examples. I'm not saying, you know, basing it on any major theory or anything, but just
yeah, I no, I get your point. I would steer away from that as much as possible. The reason being is um, personally, I find it difficult to trust a lot of what's written in news. I mean, for example, this morning on the Irish Examiner, that's why I'm having a go at them. You know, their headline was, you know, Gardaí stop and arrest driver and car was confiscated at COVID-19 checkpoint. I said, wow, this sounds serious, and so on. But, and fined €100 each. And it was the way the headline was written, it was slightly different than that. But it, against my better judgment, and partly out of curiosity, I went in to have a look. Yeah, they were after travelling from Cork to Kildare, Newbridge, I think, or somewhere around there. They were stopped, and so obviously outside the 5k per distance. But the reason the car was confiscated was the freaking driver didn't have any insurance. But they made the whole story around the 5k and the COVID-19 stuff and all this, and so there's a lot of manipulation of stuff going on in on media and social media, and that's one of the reasons I kind of pull back a lot from that stuff, because it's in the good old days of Sunday World, you know, it's just sensationalism and all that sort of stuff. Now it's just clickbait, and it's really gotten to the point of annoyance, in my opinion. And that's what can waste our time as well, you know. It's so I tend to stick to, you know, researched or written articles, journals as much as possible, because at least they will be some way authenticated. And even though some people say, well, you know, they're not lying, but they're bending the information to increase its, how to say, sex appeal for people to want to read it and get clicks and look how many people read my article and all this sort of stuff. It's because you took liberties with the absolute truth. The car was seized because they were not driving with insurance at a checkpoint. That's the real nub of it. But they built this whole thing around to give the perception that was some way COVID-19 testing outside the 5k related and so on. It could have been any checkpoint, which probably would have been the case anyway. But so after that long-winded explanation, I try to avoid any of that kind of superficial stuff.
okay,
You know,
thanks.
yeah. How we doing?
Mark,
Yeah.
yeah, just on I suppose a similar topic, like saying video resources up on Moodle, there's like videos, you know, with Seth Godin and Simon Sinek and that.
Mhm.
So if these guys, you know, like they're obviously up there for a reason, that they're, I suppose, you know, they've got their own theories, whatever,
Mhm.
on management and that. And as regards referencing them, they may not have journals written or whatever, you know. So do you just reference the YouTube video if you were to use
Yeah,
those?
you can do. You can do indeed. Yeah, it's and they're up there for a purpose to demonstrate a particular point, or a viewpoint, or a consensus viewpoint. You know. So by all means, yeah. I mean, they will be reasonably well expected. Some academics will say, they're not into that flash YouTubing stuff and so on. So, but, I mean, this is how to say, a new paradigm. You know, this is how communication is done. There are a number of academics just throw stuff up on YouTube for the enjoyment of it and sharing knowledge. You know, it's just because it isn't written in a formal journal or in a book or a chapter in a book and so on, so it doesn't make it any less impactful or less real.
But Mark, if you want to reference the book, then like, because the Cynic one is in a book actually. If you want to reference the book, that's fine then as well.
Oh
instead
yeah,
of
yeah.
YouTube.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So, okay, so tell us what are we to do in the next two parts then? You told us on communication. What are the two headings for the next two parts?
And a very clear communicated objective coming back, the same as the first part. Same approach. Okay.
I thought I'd break the atmosphere. It was very, very tense.
That's just quiet. But yeah, so it's oh, that's it. That's pretty much. I'm going off now and trying to do a few more piece of work and get to bed early and go off and get. I'm only. It's not a life-threatening operation tomorrow morning, but it's general anaesthetic. So in any case, it's yeah.
Hope all goes well. You're
That's
fabulous.
good. It's no, it's just it's only keyhole surgery on my knee and so on and so forth, you know, so I can kick ass even more effectively.
Oh my God.
Oh, dear God, help me, you know. Yeah, so you know, I spent most of today pre-recording lectures for tomorrow, you know, rather than tell the class, sorry, no class tomorrow, I won't be around, you know. The things I do for what motivates me to do these things, I have no idea. But in any case, it's they're done now. I
Thanks
assure
so
you.
much, Mark. Thanks a million for all your help.
Not at all, folks. You're more than welcome, and delighted I can be of some help for you. Of course, I don't know. Have you finalised the submission date, or?
I think it's the 8th of February was what we were told, I think, the other day.
Yeah.
Because we've started this other one as well, the 8th of February. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's a couple of weeks anyway.
Back now because of the
22.
surgery, will it?
Yeah, exactly. when are you ready to read them?
Yeah.
Do you want-
Does the word never mean? No, I'm only joking. No, I'll be there. Huh? Yeah, it's I know. You know the you know dates and so on. So they're important insofar as that at least you get them out of the way so that they don't back up and overlap into other assignments and into other modules. So you want to be able to clear the decks and so on, and not be distracted with this stuff going forward into the next module and all that. You know, and yeah, that's so
But I remember that. Sorry, Prof. I remember you said that we will be penalized if we missed the dates.
Well, no, I you know, I'm a man of my word. I don't, you know, no, I don't. You know, if it's only in your own interest to get the stuff done. I mean, if it takes you a little bit extra, and I know probably Nuala or Sinead might be chasing you, you know, to get stuff in and badgering you and all that, but it's really just to keep a little bit of structure and get things done bit by bit, you know, rather than let it all build up, you know. But you know, there's a manual for each student, and if you miss a deadline and don't get a submission, the cutoff date is this, and you get penalized by so many % per day, per week, and all that. Jesus, you know, it's you know, we'd want to get into the 21st century, really. You know, things happen, delays happen, and so on. But you know, if I were to say that I need it by such and such, you know, how I deal with my other students. I have a date by which I have to have assignments corrected, marked, and up on the system. And as long as I can judge the time it takes for me to do those, and I say, well, that's the cutoff point. The rest is just all academic stuff or administrative stuff, and, you know, ticking boxes and so on. Not by me, but by the powers that be as such, you know. So not Nuala and Eddie I'm talking about. Shut up, Mark. You don't use this shovel in a hole.
All right, thank you.
Okay, not all, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, so if there's no more questions, folks, I'll sign off and I'll do some video editing and put this up onto
Thanks very
YouTube.
much, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Not all, folks. Best of luck, and talk to you
Take
later.
care.
Take it
Good
easy.
luck tomorrow.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Nate. Cheerio. Bye bye.